My granddaughter, Emma, had been standing in my kitchen doorway for less than 30 seconds when she leaned in and whispered 3 words that changed everything. "Don't sign anything." The serving spoon in my hand suddenly felt like it weighed 10 pounds. I was supposed to be focused on mashing sweet potatoes for Thanksgiving dinner, but all I could hear was the pounding of my own heartbeat. Emma's dark eyes darted toward the living room where my son, Robert, and his wife, Diane, were setting the table, their voices artificially bright as they discussed the weather. "What do you mean?" I managed to whisper back, my 78-year-old hands trembling slightly as I set down the spoon. "I found something in Robert's jacket," Emma said, her voice barely audible over the sound of the oven timer. "We need to talk. Alone." Before I could respond, Robert's voice boomed from the dining room. "Mom! Emma! Dinner's almost ready. Come join us for a toast." Emma's fingers wrapped around my wrist, firm but gentle. "Trust me, Grandma. Something's very, very wrong." The way she said those last words, with the careful precision of someone who'd spent the last year working at the district attorney's office, sent ice water through my veins. This wasn't the dramatic concern of a young woman worried about holiday family tensions. This was the professional alarm of someone who'd just discovered evidence of a crime. I'd raised Robert to be honest, to be kind, to value family above everything. But in that moment, watching my son arrange wine glasses with 2 careful hands while his wife checked her phone every 30 seconds, I realized I might not know my own child at all. Let me back up. The trouble had started 3 months ago, though I didn't recognize it then. Robert had begun calling more frequently, always with the same questions. "Mom, have you thought about updating your will? Mom, have you considered what would happen if something happened to you? Mom, wouldn't you be more comfortable somewhere with full-time care? I'm 78, not dead. I still drive. I still manage my own finances. I spent 40 years as an accountant before I retired, and my mind is as sharp as it was at 40. Maybe sharper, since I'm not distracted by raising a child who apparently grew up to become a stranger." The lake house had been in my family for 50 years. My late husband Tom and I had bought it when we were newlyweds, dreaming of the summers we'd spend here with our children and grandchildren. After Tom passed 3 years ago, this house became even more precious to me. It wasn't just property. It was memory made solid. Every floorboard held a piece of our history. But Robert had been acting strangely about the house lately. 2 weeks ago, I'd caught him measuring the living room. When I asked why, he'd laughed it off. "Just curious about square footage, Mom. This old place must be worth a fortune now." Last week I'd found him in my office, rifling through my filing cabinet. He'd claimed he was looking for old family photos. Then came the phone call that should have been my final warning. Robert had insisted, actually insisted, not asked, that I spend Thanksgiving at the lake house instead of driving to his place in Detroit like we'd done for the past 15 years. "You shouldn't be making that drive anymore, Mom," he'd said, his voice dripping with concern that felt rehearsed. "Diane and I will come to you. It'll be more relaxing." I'd agreed because, foolishly, I'd been touched. I'd thought my son was finally prioritizing time with his aging mother. Now, standing in my kitchen with Emma's hand still on my wrist and dread pooling in my stomach, I understood. This wasn't about relaxation. This was about isolation. "Mom." Robert appeared in the kitchen doorway, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Everything okay in here?" "Fine, sweetheart," I said automatically, decades of maternal instinct taking over. "Just showing Emma how to make your grandmother's sweet potato recipe." "Great, great." But he didn't leave. He stood there, watching us with an intensity that made my skin crawl. "Actually, Mom, I was hoping we could talk after dinner. About some paperwork. Nothing major, just some estate planning documents my lawyer friend put together. You know, for your peace of mind." Estate planning, lawyer friend, peace of mind. The phrases landed like stones in still water, rippling outward with implications I didn't want to examine. "Sure, honey," I heard myself say. "After dinner." Robert's smile widened. "Perfect. You're going to love what we've put together for you, Mom. It'll take such a load off your mind." After he left, Emma immediately pulled me toward the back door. "Coat. Now, we're taking a walk." "Emma, it's 30 degrees outside." "Grandma." Her voice was sharp enough to cut. I found conservatorship papers in Robert's jacket, along with brochures for Oakwood Estates nursing facility and a business card for someone named Dr. Patricia Williams, who isn't licensed in Michigan. If we don't talk right now, you might not get another chance. The world tilted sideways. Conservatorship, nursing facility, unlicensed doctor. My mind, trained by 4 decades of forensic accounting, began connecting dots I'd been desperately trying to ignore. Robert's sudden financial interest, the measurements, the insistence on keeping me at the lake house, Diane's constant phone checking. I grabbed my coat. We walked down to the dock, far enough from the house that our voices wouldn't carry, but close enough that we could see if anyone came looking for us. The November wind cut across the lake like a knife, but I barely felt it. I was too numb with betrayal. "Show me," I said. Emma pulled out her phone. She'd photographed everything. Conservatorship petition, already filled out with my name. Medical evaluation forms with pre-checked boxes, indicating cognitive decline, behavioral issues, inability to manage finances, a contract with Oakwood Estates, and most damningly, a sales agreement for my lake house, dated for next month, with Robert listed as the seller. "I came early to surprise you," Emma said, her voice tight with controlled fury. I was hanging up my coat, and Robert's jacket fell off the hook. Everything spilled out. "Grandma, they're planning to have you declared mentally incompetent. They've arranged for this Dr. Williams to evaluate you probably sometime this weekend. Once they have her signature on these forms, Robert gets emergency conservatorship. He'll have complete control over your estate." "But I'm not incompetent," I whispered. "I manage my own accounts. I drive. It doesn't matter." Emma's legal training was evident in every word. In Michigan, if a licensed physician signs off on cognitive decline, and if there's no one to contest the conservatorship petition, it can go through in days, especially if the petitioner is a concerned family member acting in the elder's best interest. "You said she's not licensed in Michigan." "She's licensed in Indiana. Different enough that most people wouldn't check. Close enough that she can claim she's qualified. I looked her up while you were cooking. Dr. Patricia Williams has been involved in 3 previous conservatorship cases, all of which resulted in the sale of the ward's primary residence. She's a professional." The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. "The phone," I said suddenly. "Last month, Robert insisted on switching my cell phone to a family plan, said it would save money, but now all my calls go through his account." Emma's face went white. "He's monitoring your communications. Grandma, how many people have you talked to this week?" I thought back. "You. The woman at the grocery store. That's it. Robert said you and your parents were busy with work, that I shouldn't bother you with holiday planning. He said he'd coordinate everything. He's been isolating you." Emma's hands clenched into fists. Classic financial abuse tactic. Control communications, limit outside contact, make the victim dependent on the abuser, then move in for the kill when no one's watching. But why? The question came out as a sob. Why would my own son do this to me? Emma's expression softened with sympathy, but her voice stayed hard. "I did some digging after I found the papers. Robert's real estate development company filed for bankruptcy protection 2 months ago. He owes over $1 million to various creditors. The courts are moving to liquidate his personal assets. He's desperate, Grandma, and your lake house is worth $2 million. I finished numbly. "Maybe more, with the land values going up. He's already borrowed against it," Emma said gently. "I found loan documents in the packet. He forged your signature on a home equity line of credit 6 months ago. He's taken out $200,000. The bank doesn't know because the bills go to a P.O. box in his name. If you found out and reported it, he'd go to prison for fraud. But if he gets conservatorship, he can claim he had authority. He can sell the house, pay off his debts, and you'll never see a dime. You'll be in Oakwood Estates, medicated into compliance, while he rebuilds his business empire on your life's work." I thought I might vomit. This was my son. The baby I'd nursed through colic and chicken pox, the boy I'd taught to ride a bike, the young man whose business ventures I'd supported with loans and encouragement, even when Tom had warned me that Robert needed to learn to stand on his own 2 feet. Tom had seen something I'd refused to acknowledge. Robert was always the favorite, the golden child. His younger sister Sarah had moved to California years ago, building a quiet life as a teacher. She visited when she could, called regularly, but she'd never asked for anything. Robert always needed just a little more help. One more loan. One more chance. And now he was planning to steal everything. What do we do? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Emma's eyes glinted with something fierce and protective. We document everything. We gather evidence. And then I call my boss at the DA's office. Because Grandma, what Robert's planning isn't just unethical. It's criminal elder abuse, fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. We're going to bury him. He's my son, I whispered. And I'm your granddaughter. Emma's voice was steel-wrapped in velvet. You taught me to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. So that's what we're going to do. We walked back to the house in silence, our breath fogging in the cold air. Through the lit windows, I could see Robert and Diane moving around the dining room, playing house in my home, while they plotted to steal it from me. The rage hit me then, sudden and clarifying. How dare they? How dare my own child stand in the house his father and I built, eating food I prepared, planning to rob me of my autonomy, my home, my dignity. Robert thought I was a helpless old woman he could manipulate and discard. He was about to discover he'd underestimated both his mother and his daughter. Dinner was a masterclass in acting. I smiled and passed dishes and pretended I didn't notice Diane's constant phone checking or Robert's too frequent glances at his watch. Emma played along perfectly, chatting about her new job and asking Diane about her book club. We were 3 women performing normalcy while sitting on a powder keg. After the meal, as I started clearing plates, Robert finally made his move. Mom, why don't you leave that? I want to go over those papers I mentioned. Just some simple estate planning, but I think you'll feel so much better once everything's organized. Let me just get coffee started, I said pleasantly. Emma, honey, would you help me? Actually, Diane interjected smoothly. I'd love Emma's help in here. She was telling me about her new apartment, and I have some decorating tips. You go with Robert, Margaret. She was separating us. They knew Emma was the threat. Emma caught my eye, gave the tiniest nod. We'd talked about this on the walk back. She'd prepared me for the play they'd make. Sure, Emma said brightly. Grandma, you go ahead. I'll bring coffee when it's ready. Robert led me to my own study, Tom's old office, with his books still on the shelves and his reading chair by the window. Robert had spread papers across the desk, creating an official-looking tableau of documents and folders. Have a seat, Mom. He gestured to the chair across from my desk. His desk now, apparently, in his mind. I sat, forcing my hands to stay relaxed on the armrests, even as my heart hammered against my ribs. Okay, so this is pretty straightforward. Robert's voice had taken on a condescending tone I'd never noticed before, or maybe had chosen not to notice. This document here establishes a power of attorney. It just means that if anything happens to you, not that anything will, of course, but if you have a medical emergency or start to forget things, I can step in and manage your affairs. Make sure bills get paid, that sort of thing. I pay my own bills, I said mildly. Of course you do, right now. But Mom, you're 78. Dad had his first stroke at 82. We just want to be prepared. Tom's stroke had been massive and fatal. There'd been no slow decline, no forgetting things, but I didn't point that out. I just nodded and looked at the papers. The power of attorney document was actually a conservatorship petition. I could tell because I'd helped my own mother navigate the legal system when my father had developed Alzheimer's. I knew what these forms looked like. This wasn't a precautionary measure. This was a legal declaration that I was already incompetent. And this one? I pointed to another document. That's just a financial inventory, listing your assets so we know what we're protecting. The house, your savings, investments, everything in one place. Everything in one place for him to liquidate. Why don't you take these home and read them over? I suggested. I'd like to have my own lawyer review them before I sign anything. Robert's smile froze. Mom, these are standard documents. My lawyer friend Richard already reviewed them. You don't need to spend money on another lawyer when we've already got expert advice. Richard Chen? I asked innocently. Is he the one who helped you with your business bankruptcy? The temperature in the room dropped about 20 degrees. Robert's face went carefully blank. How did you know about that? Honey, I'm your mother. I keep track of things. I smiled sweetly, channels my inner steel. I'm also a retired accountant who spent 40 years investigating financial irregularities. Did you really think I wouldn't notice when you forged my signature on a home equity loan? Robert went pale. Actually pale. I don't know what you're talking about. $200,000 from First Michigan Bank. Loan number 77439821. You used a P.O. box for the billing address, but you listed this property as collateral. That's fraud, Robert. That's prison time. You're confused, he said, but his voice shook. Mom, this is exactly why we need to get these documents signed. You're mixing things up, getting paranoid. The study door burst open. Diane stood there, phone in her hand, eyes wide. She knows, she hissed to Robert. The little bitch told her everything. Behind her, I could hear Emma's voice, sharp and angry. Get out of my way, Diane. Robert moved fast. He lunged across the desk, grabbing the papers and shoving them toward me. Sign them. Sign them right now, Mom. Or I swear to God. Or what? Emma appeared in the doorway, shoving past Diane. Her phone was out, recording. What are you going to do, Robert? Force your 78-year-old mother to sign legal documents under duress? That's coercion. That's another felony. This is family business, Robert snarled. Stay out of it. This became my business when you decided to commit elder abuse, Emma shot back. Grandma, don't sign anything. Robert, step away from that desk right now. You have no idea what you're interfering with, Diane said, her voice vicious. Your uncle is trying to protect his mother. From what? Her own autonomy? Emma's laugh was harsh. I found the whole file, Diane. The fake medical evaluations, the contract with Oakwood Estates, the sales agreement for the lake house. I know exactly what you're doing. And it's over. Robert's face twisted with something ugly. You're ruining everything. This was supposed to be simple. Mom would be taken care of. Everyone would be happy. Everyone but me, I said quietly. All eyes turned to me. I wouldn't be happy, Robert. I'd be locked in a nursing home, drugged into compliance, while you sold my home and spent my money. Did you think about that at all? You're old, the words exploded out of him. You're old, and you're alone, and you don't need this much house or this much money. Sarah got everything growing up, the attention, the praise, the perfect daughter award, and I got nothing but criticism and loans I had to beg for. Well, guess what, Mom? It's my turn. I deserve this. The mask had cracked completely. This wasn't about my well-being. This was about decades of resentment, of feeling second best, of watching his younger sister succeed while his own ventures failed. In his mind, he'd earned this theft through childhood slights and perceived injustices. You deserved my love, I said, and my voice broke. You had it. Always. But you never deserved my dignity or my home. Touching, Diane said coldly. But this conversation is over. Robert, get the doctor on the phone. We'll have her sign the evaluation tonight and file the petition in the morning. There's no judge in the world who'll side with a confused old woman over her concerned son. Actually, Emma said, there's a DA investigator about 15 minutes away who's going to be very interested in your conspiracy to commit fraud. Diane laughed. You called the police? On Thanksgiving? Please. This is a family dispute. They're not going to... The sound of car doors slamming cut her off. Through the window, I could see red and blue lights reflecting off the lake. Emma smiled, sharp and satisfied. Not just police. Detective Morrison from the Financial Crimes Unit. She's been investigating Oakwood Estates for 6 months, following reports of a conservatorship kickback scheme. When I told her about Dr. Williams and Richard Chen's involvement, she was very interested. Oh, and the FBI's got questions too, about the forged loan documents. Turns out, bank fraud crosses state lines into federal territory. Robert ran. He actually ran, bolting for the back door. But there were officers there too. I watched through the window as my son was tackled in my backyard, face first into the cold November grass, while a female detective read him his rights. Diane tried a different approach. She burst into tears. I didn't want to do this, Robert made me. I was trying to protect Margaret, I swear. Save it, Emma said flatly. I recorded everything from the kitchen. You called me a little bitch for defending my grandmother. That's on tape. Your voice is on the phone calls to Dr. Williams setting up the fake evaluation. You helped draft the sales agreement for the house. You're an active co-conspirator in elder abuse, fraud, and conspiracy to commit theft. You're going to prison, Diane. Stop crying and face it with some dignity. Detective Morrison entered through the front door, her badge clipped to her belt, her expression professionally sympathetic. Miss Sullivan? I'm Detective Janet Morrison. I'm so sorry to meet under these circumstances, but I need to get your statement about what happened here tonight. The next hours were a blur, statement after statement, photos of documents, Emma's video evidence downloaded and filed. Dr. Patricia Williams was arrested at her hotel. She'd been planning to come to the house tomorrow morning for the evaluation. Richard Chen was picked up at his home in Detroit. The manager of Oakwood Estates, Gerald Thompson, was already in custody, singing like a canary about the entire operation. As it turned out, Robert and Diane had stumbled into an existing conspiracy. Oakwood Estates had been running a conservatorship scheme for 3 years, partnering with unscrupulous lawyers and willing doctors to target wealthy elderly individuals. They'd identify marks through financial records, make contact through various means, and orchestrate rapid conservatorships that allowed them to liquidate assets. Robert's bankruptcy had put him in their crosshairs as a potential co-conspirator. They'd recruited him, refined his plan, and taken a percentage in exchange for their expertise. My son hadn't just betrayed me on his own. He'd sold me out to an organized crime ring. By the time the police left, it was past midnight. Emma and I sat in the living room, the remains of Thanksgiving dinner still on the table, the house feeling emptier and larger than ever before. I'm so sorry, Grandma, Emma said softly. I know he's your son. Was, I corrected, and the word tasted like ash. Whatever he was, that person is gone. Maybe he never existed. What happens now? I took a shaky breath. Now we wait for the legal system to do its job. Detective Morrison said the DA's office will prosecute. Robert's looking at 8 to 15 years for the forgery alone, plus additional charges for the conspiracy and elder abuse. Diane will get 5 to 8 as an accomplice. Dr. Williams and Chen are facing multiple fraud charges across state lines. Oakwood Estates is being shut down and investigated for every conservatorship they've filed in the past 5 years. Good, Emma said fiercely. They deserve worse, maybe. I looked around my living room at the life Tom and I had built. But you know what? I'm not going to let Robert's greed poison the rest of my life. This house is still mine. My autonomy is still mine. My future is still mine to decide. Emma's eyes filled with tears. You're the strongest person I know. No, honey. I'm just a woman who got very lucky that her granddaughter is smart, observant, and brave enough to act. You saved me tonight. You saved my life, my home, and my dignity. You taught me to fight for what's right, Emma said. I learned from the best. The trial happened 3 months later. I sat in the courtroom and watched my son's face as the prosecution laid out his crimes in meticulous detail. The forged signature, the stolen $200,000, the conspiracy with Oakwood Estates, the planned conservatorship, the intent to sell my home and abandon me in a nursing facility while he rebuilt his failed business. Robert showed no remorse. Even when confronted with evidence, my signature comparison, bank records, recorded phone calls, he maintained that he'd been trying to help me, that I was too old to manage my affairs, that he deserved to inherit eventually, so why wait? The jury deliberated for 90 minutes. Guilty on all counts. Robert got 8 years. Diane got 5. Dr. Williams got 10 for multiple fraud counts across 3 states. Richard Chen was disbarred and sentenced to 3 years. Gerald Thompson, who'd organized the entire Oakwood scheme, got 15 years and permanent revocation of his healthcare facility license. But the real victory came 3 weeks after sentencing, when I received a letter from the Michigan Attorney General's office. The investigation into Oakwood Estates had uncovered 23 other victims, 23 elderly people who'd been illegally declared incompetent, stripped of their rights, and robbed of their assets. Because Emma had acted, because we'd reported what was happening, those people were getting justice. Their conservatorships were being overturned. Their assets were being restored. One woman, a 79-year-old retired teacher named Dorothy Chen, called me personally. I thought I was crazy. She sobbed over the phone. My daughter kept telling me I was losing my mind, that I couldn't remember things. They put me in Oakwood, and I couldn't get anyone to listen. Your granddaughter saved my life. That's when I knew. This wasn't just about me and Robert. This was about every vulnerable elder who'd been targeted, exploited, and silenced. Emma and I had exposed a system of abuse, and now that system was crumbling. 6 months after the trial, I did something I'd been thinking about since that terrible Thanksgiving night. I sold the lake house. Not because I had to, but because I chose to. The house had too many ghosts now. Tom's memory tangled up with Robert's betrayal. I couldn't separate the good years from the poisoned ones. I bought a smaller place in Ann Arbor, close to Emma's apartment. I used part of the money to establish a foundation, the Margaret Sullivan Elder Protection Fund. We provide free legal assistance to elderly people facing conservatorship proceedings, fund investigations into potential elder abuse, and train law enforcement on recognizing financial exploitation. Emma left the DA's office to run the foundation. Prosecuting criminals is satisfying, she told me. But preventing crimes before they happen? That's going to save lives. We held our first Thanksgiving in my new home, smaller but filled with genuine love. Emma, her parents, my daughter Sarah, and her husband and 3 elderly clients we'd helped free from exploitative conservatorships. Dorothy Chen brought her famous apple pie. We laughed, we cried, we celebrated survival. There was one letter I hadn't opened, sitting on my desk for 3 weeks. Robert had written from prison. I could see his handwriting through the envelope. Still the same messy scrawl I'd tried to correct in 3rd grade. Read it or don't, Emma said gently. Whatever you need. I opened it on Christmas morning, sitting by my new fireplace, coffee growing cold in my hands. Dear Mom, it began. I've had a lot of time to think. My therapist here says I need to take accountability. I'm supposed to tell you I'm sorry, but the truth is I'm angry. I'm angry that Sarah always got the attention. I'm angry that you and Dad had so much money but made me work for every penny. I'm angry that you chose Emma over me. Maybe someday I'll understand what I did wrong. Maybe someday I'll mean it when I say I'm sorry. But today, I'm just angry and I miss my old life. That's the truth. Robert, I read it twice. Then I folded it carefully, walked to the fireplace, and dropped it into the flames. Some people never find redemption. Some people, when faced with their own failures, choose bitterness over growth. Robert was my son, but he was also a man who'd chosen greed over love, ego over empathy. I couldn't save him from himself. I could only save myself and others like me. What did it say? Emma asked when I returned to the living room. Nothing I needed to hear, I said. And I meant it. The foundation has helped 62 elderly people in the past year. 62 people who were targeted, manipulated, or abused. 62 families that were torn apart by greed or sewn back together by truth. We've lobbied for stronger conservatorship oversight, mandatory second opinions for cognitive evaluations, and criminal penalties for predatory lawyers and doctors. I'm 80 years old now. I'm healthy, active, and sharp. I manage my own finances. I drive my own car. I make my own decisions. And when people ask me what I want my legacy to be, I tell them this. I want to be remembered as the woman who refused to be a victim, who fought back when her own son tried to steal her life, who turned tragedy into purpose and pain into protection for others. Robert thought I was weak because I was old. He thought age made me vulnerable, compliant, easy to manipulate. He was wrong. Age made me wise. Experience made me strong. And love, real love, the kind Emma showed me by risking everything to tell the truth, made me unstoppable. This house isn't as big as the lake house. My family isn't as large as it once was. But what I have is real. It's mine. It's chosen, not obligated. And every morning when I wake up in my own bed, in my own home, with my autonomy intact and my future in my hands, I know I won. Not because Robert went to prison. Not because justice was served. I won because I refused to let anyone, even my own child, steal my voice, my power, or my life. And I'll spend every remaining day I have making sure no one steals anyone else's either.